It is my intention in this chapter to demonstrate clearly how a typical social upbringing that instills in the individual certain values and beliefs that make up a thought methodology used for being successful is not practical or functional and is inconsistent with the methods necessary to be successful in the trading environment. Someone attempting to operate in the trading environment in all the familiar ways that would assure getting what they want will likely find themselves in a constant state of frustration, anxiety, and fear, wondering what is wrong or thinking something must be wrong with them. The irony is, of course, that, on the surface, trading looks so simple, when in fact most people will find it to be the most difficult endeavor they ever undertake. Success will always seem so close, and yet always so elusive. And this frustration will continue until the trader adapts to the conditions that exist in the trading environment by learning the new thinking methodology, one that works most effectively in that environment and not what he thinks will work based on his cultural and social upbringing. Perhaps many of you reading this book have heard about a seminar being offered where you can learn how to walk barefoot over a 20-foot bed of red-hot coals. The people who developed the method to make it possible did so on the assumption that the achievements of people who do things very well and excel beyond what other members of the same culture of society would consider possible do so as the result of a specific way they think, a methodology in which their beliefs are in some way different from everyone else's. This methodology can be broken down into a system that can be learned and subsequently taught to others. The only difference between those who excel and those of mediocre achievement is that one group has learned a thinking methodology that has not occurred to the other. With this hypothesis, it is my understanding that the people who developed the program went to the South Pacific and sought out those who demonstrated an ability to walk over hot coals with their bare feet, without any physical damage whatsoever. Upon finding a few of these South Pacific firewalkers, the program developers proceeded to analyze their beliefs and attitudes so as to arrive at a thinking methodology they could teach in the United States. I'm sure I don't have to point out the physical and emotional implications of attempting to walk over a red-hot bed of coals with your bare feet. The fear generated over just the thought of doing it would normally be overwhelming. The potential physical damage to your feet, with the possibility of being crippled for the rest of your life, is quite real. And yet, as presented by several news organizations, both television and print, people from all walks of life involved in the seminar accomplished what we would universally agree to be a tremendous feat. They overcame their fear and walked 20 feet over a bed of hot coals. Now, I'm not going to have you firewalking the future's pit, but habits of thought die hard. And to make way for the new thinking methodology I offer as a means of excelling as a trader, you will have to question some of your beliefs and probe deeply rooted concepts of what is possible. Sometimes only a thorough mental house cleaning can help you throw away failure to make room for success. And exposing yourself to information that may cause you to ask yourself what if it were true is the first step to any mental cleansing process. For many reasons, which will be explored in greater depth in Part 2, it rarely, if ever, occurs to the beginning trader that the markets confront him with an environment that is categorically different from anything he is accustomed to or trained to deal with effectively by society. For example, the markets can be looked at as a never-ending event, always changing, virtually without structure, in perpetual motion, with an unlimited potential for profit as well as loss in every trade. The psychological impact on the individual interacting with such an environment is formidable, especially when you consider the many ways in which all of us typically go about structuring our lives with highly defined boundaries, limits, and rules, so things stay basically the same. For most people, a static environment is a fundamental component of their sense of security and well-being. Not only can the markets destroy a person's sense of security by forcing the trader to confront, on a moment-to-moment basis, his lack of acceptance of change, but they also produce an emotional environment of considerable competitiveness and stress. There's the compulsive need to win millions, with the simultaneous fear of financial devastation. The markets tease a trader with the very real possibility of fulfilling his grandest dreams of financial independence and at the same time stand ready and willing to take away everything he owns, and more. Furthermore, the principles of time, effort, and reward associated with most job situations simply do not apply with the markets. For example, many jobs offer an unchanging reward, regardless of effort, because of hourly wages or yearly salaries. For a trader, effort can be irrelevant, and there is virtually no relationship between time and reward. A trader can be stunned with a windfall profit in a matter of seconds from making one simple decision, and the only energy expended was mental. Initially, you may think, what could be wrong with making a lot of money in minutes or seconds? A lot. Whether you're aware of it or not, most if not all of us grow up with highly structured belief systems about the conditions under which we deserve to receive money. In fact, many people, because of their childhood conditioning and religious training, believe they don't deserve any money they didn't work for. Certainly, making a lot of money in a very short period of time with no effort expended does not fall within the definition most people have about working for their money. So how does someone reconcile windfall profits against these structured work beliefs, especially when they're probably not even aware of them or would not take them into consideration if they were? This kind of mental conflict usually gets reconciled by the trader finding some clever, ingenious, or mundane way of giving his money back to the markets. Not adjusting to the differences between the cultural and trading environments, or just being unaware that differences exist, can certainly account for many of the trading errors committed by the majority of traders. Yet, a thinking methodology can not only redefine the market's behavior in understandable terms to avert such mistakes, it can also manage most, if not all, typical undisciplined, emotional reactions to that behavior. In an emotionally charged situation that requires split-second decision-making, which could lead to failure of some kind, there's little time to compare the present event with previous market experiences. You probably wouldn't even notice if you had behaved similarly in the past and suffered the same disastrous consequences. Because the present situation is so immediate, you may have no concept of how typical and even thoughtless your behavior may be. In fact, it may be news to you that there are only a limited number of such typical reactions leading to failure. Being able to recognize them can prevent you from repeating past mistakes without losing any of that time so necessary for split-second decisions. The following typical trading errors have a specific cause rooted in a thinking methodology that can be changed. 1. Refusing to define a loss. 2. Not liquidating a losing trade, even after you have acknowledged the trade's potential is greatly diminished. 3. Getting locked into a specific opinion or belief about market direction. From a psychological perspective, this is equivalent to trying to control the market with your expectation of what it will do. I'm right, the market is wrong. 4. Focusing on price and the monetary value of a trade, instead of the potential for the market to move based on its behavior and structure. 5. Revenge trading, as if you were trying to get back at the market for what it took away from you. 6. Not reversing your position even when you clearly sense a change in market direction. 7. Not following the rules of the trading system. 8. Planning for a move or feeling one building, but then finding yourself immobilized to hit the bid or offer, and therefore denying yourself the opportunity to profit. 9. Not acting on your instincts or intuition. 10. Establishing a consistent pattern of trading success over a period of time, and then giving your winnings back to the market in 1 or 2 trades and starting the cycle over again. Skills to be acquired. To excel in any activity, whether it is mental, such as trading, or physical, such as swimming, we need to learn specialized skills. These skills give us the necessary requirements to look at, think about, and behave toward events in a manner different from what we may be used to or what we may have been taught. However, beyond the sheer mechanics of the activity, which just about anyone can master, lies a particular thinking methodology or strategy that leads to excellence. Although few people have it, such a thinking methodology can nevertheless be learned. Any thinking methodology requires a series of approaches to goals and problems. These approaches might be better described as mental techniques, even skills of thought application. For example, one such skill might be the ability to identify those conditions that are conducive to making a common trading error before it actually happens. Other techniques or skills include: 1. Learning the dynamics of goal achievement so you can stay positively focused on what you want, not what you fear. 2. Learning how to recognize the skills you need to progress as a trader and then stay focused on the development of those skills, instead of the money, which is merely a byproduct of your skills. 3. Learning how to adapt yourself to respond to fundamental changes in market conditions more readily. 4. Identifying the amount of risk you are comfortable with, your risk comfort level, and then learn how to expand it in a way that is consistent with your ability to maintain an objective perspective of market activity. 5. Learning how to execute your trades immediately upon your perception of an opportunity. 6. Learning how to let the market tell you how much is enough, instead of assessing the potential from your personal value system of how much is enough. 7. Learning how to structure your beliefs to control your perception of market movement. 8. Learning how to achieve and maintain a state of objectivity. 9. Learning how to recognize true intuitive information and then learning how to act on it consistently. How is this different from a trading system? Trading systems give us a way to define, quantify, and categorize market behavior. Since the markets offer traders a seemingly infinite combination of behaviors, all with their corresponding opportunities and risks, it is easy to understand how our minds can become overwhelmed. Trading systems limit the scope of market behavior, and therefore make this activity a little easier for our minds to manage. They also give us direction and suggestions about what to do in a given market situation. Without them, traders could easily feel as if they are floating aimlessly in an endless sea of possibilities and opportunities with no land in sight. Since trading systems define opportunity and offer suggestions, following these suggestions can lead to the development of skills, even though as suggestions they merely point the way for your awareness to be directed. A true skill not only points the way, but almost automatically begins to direct awareness as well. And a thinking methodology controls the selection of which skills should be used and when. I do not offer a trading system in this book. It's more a means of interfacing a trading system with the mind's psychological structure. If a trading system provides awareness of market signals, and suggests behaviors appropriate for any given market situation, then the thinking methodology I will share with you teaches skills and processes of skill application. Having the skills necessary to consciously manipulate one's psychological environment is essential for the trader who recognizes how ineffectual a trading system can suddenly become whenever a tense situation demands a split-second decision. Most everyone reading a book of this nature would consider himself as successful to one degree or another, either through trial and error, or the rigorous application of some proven formula, through which each has learned, intentionally or not, skills or methodologies of thought to achieve this success. In any case, we all have a natural tendency not only to want to achieve success in something, but also to apply the principles of success that work very well in one situation to practically everything else. It often doesn't occur to us that some environments may require very different psychological resources to achieve success. Suppose, for example, that you arbitrarily tried to apply a certain thought system of success to trading futures or stocks without first investigating the usefulness or validity of that system in relationship to the actual conditions as they exist in the markets. More than likely, you would be doomed to failure before you even started. Obviously, people don't consciously start trading with the belief that they don't have the right resources or that they're going to fail. In fact, it is just the opposite. Because most traders come from or still enjoy very successful careers outside of trading, they have a great deal of confidence in their ability to extend this success in the trading environment. This unfounded confidence, coupled with the way the markets distort a person's concept of reward in relationship to time and effort expended, will cause the trader to form some very unrealistic expectations about the kind of results he should achieve. Believing that trading is easy is the reason for the unrealistic expectations. And they are probably the single biggest reason why most traders never make it beyond the initial levels of development before they lose all their money. Starting out believing that trading is easy is a psychological trap that entices almost all traders. But it isn't too difficult to understand why, When you examine the dynamics of the process of how we set up a standard of performance for ourselves by which to gauge our progress, there are four basic components that make up a person's standard of performance or expectations for results. First is our basic concept of time. Most people believe that it is limited, passing non-stop and will eventually run out. Second is our concept of effort. Our supply of personal energy is not inexhaustible, it runs out, we tire, and we may even become ill if we don't rest properly. The third is our concept of expertise, the number of skills we have learned and our degree of proficiency in using these skills. It usually takes a great deal of time and energy to acquire expertise. Now, one of the primary ways we learn to value ourselves is based on our belief about how much work we do and the amount of time it takes to do it. Which brings us to the fourth component in the equation, reward. To determine the amount of reward we should receive, we will make an assessment about how hard or easy a job is by determining how much effort, personal energy, we will need to expend and to assess how long the job will take, using up our limited time, so we can then determine how much we should be compensated. It is like our own personal supply and demand formula for our time and energy. Now I am going to put all this together to demonstrate how trading distorts all these components in a way that allows someone to believe that trading is easy. First, to function in the market environment requires very little if any physical effort, especially for the floor trader. Second, time is not a relevant factor because a trader can be stunned with thousands of dollars in profits in a matter of moments. Conceivably, you could put on a trade, never have the market go against your position, and be rewarded at levels far beyond your expectations of what is possible. A person can't help but make the association between the speed at which something like this could happen and how easy it must be because there was no physical effort required. Most people don't have to experience this personally to make the erroneous assumption that trading is easy. They will just naturally do it the first time they experience market action. They will assume that they would have been a buyer at some low point and held on to liquidate the trade for a profit. Even if it's just for a couple of ticks, invariably they will multiply those ticks by several contracts to come up with these mental windfall profits for themselves. These profits could represent an exotic trip, a dream car, or thoughts of financial independence. Then they will compare how long and how hard they normally have to work to get the same amount of money, and what will result is a completely erroneous conclusion that trading is easy. The problem is that it is almost impossible for the beginning trader to make a reasonable assessment of the level of expertise that is required to function in the trading environment, like learning to limit oneself in an unlimited environment, when possibly for the first time in the trader's life he has the freedom to express himself creatively without any social constraints, or the amount of the time it takes to acquire this expertise, especially when it looks as if the profits should just roll in so easily and so fast. These kinds of assumptions will blind the trader to the true nature of the endeavor. Time is certainly a factor in learning to perceive opportunity or learning how to execute one's trades flawlessly. Both these skills could take a great deal of time to learn. However, neither time nor effort is a factor in relationship to the potential for reward. So what happens when we don't live up to our own expectations? Especially, when most everyone starts their trading career thinking it's a piece of cake and that they're only moments away from fulfilling their financial dreams. Regardless of how long it may take any individual to admit that he's not making it, the experience is painful and invariably generates feelings of inadequacy, guilt, and even shame. When one fails, especially when the expectations for success are so high, it will create three major psychological obstacles that have to be overcome before any measure of success will be realized. First, you will need to learn how to release yourself from any feelings of inadequacy, guilt, or shame. Second, you will need to learn how to identify and repair the residual psychological damage caused by the emotionally painful experiences because painful experiences have the potential to generate fear. Finally, you will need to undo any inappropriate trading habits and learn the appropriate skills that will help you eventually to accumulate the wealth you desire from trading. For many, what I have outlined may seem like an overwhelming task, and I'm not going to downplay it in the slightest. Even if you haven't as yet subjected yourself to any emotional trauma, Just learning the appropriate skills will be no easy task. However, you should keep in mind that the rewards can be astronomical. Would any other endeavor having the unlimited potential of trading in futures or stocks be easy? As you proceed through this book, it is very important to keep in mind that neither I nor anyone else can deny what you consider to be the structure of reality, even though what I hold to be true and what you hold to be true may differ by a wide margin. Force, violence, or even torture will not cause you or anyone else to give up your beliefs if you don't want to. However, if what I offer will produce a result you desire, then you may be quite willing to suspend, at least temporarily, what you hold to be true and see if what works for me will also work for you. The firewalkers I mentioned earlier demonstrated how a thinking methodology could suspend their belief that walking on a bed of hot coals would severely damage their feet, even though they had learned early in their lives the dangers and pain of intense heat. Perhaps you too can suspend some of your beliefs about what makes trading successful. You could find out how your own early training, before you ever considered becoming a trader, may have produced contradictory attitudes and beliefs that cancel all good intentions and optimistic trading, and thus lead to failure. Understandably, before you even consider the possibility of changing some of your innermost beliefs, you will certainly want to know not only how the process of altering beliefs works but also what benefits it will have for you as a trader. Like all traders, you have probably read repeatedly what it takes to be successful at trading: trade with the trend, cut your losses and let your profits run, money management is the key, and so on. As true as these adages are, they are too vague to give you a clear understandable connection between the application of these principles and their benefits, a positive and successful trading experience. If you will recall, I listed resistance to accepting a loss among the most common trading errors. If you have ever experienced such resistance, you have probably also encountered the following thought: how do I accept small losses when what I want to do is make money, and I feel like a failure every time I lose? Your helplessness in such a situation and the disastrous consequences for your finances are at the essence of this discussion. If, for example, you can change what losses mean to you and how you represent them mentally, then to whatever degree you can accomplish this, you will be releasing yourself from the stress and anxiety experienced when you have to acknowledge any given trade as a loser and take the appropriate action. The few individuals who have achieved astronomical success in trading at some point learned to stop trying to conquer the markets or make them conform to their expectations or mental limitations. At some point in their trading careers, they understood the psychological implications of an event that is never ending, that begins only when one decides to participate, that ends only when one has had enough, and behaves without the slightest regard for individual survival. Eventually they adapted to these unusual and demanding psychological conditions by changing their perspective, although, as I have already pointed out from my experiences, the process of change usually isn't the result of making a conscious choice to take a step-by-step approach, as this book is designed to give you. In our everyday lives it is much easier to control the external environment to satisfy our desires. What I mean is, if something has to change to get what we want, we will find it much easier to change the external conditions to suit our needs before we attempt to change our mental perspective. Changing ourselves would seem like the absolute last resort as a solution to any problem. So, why would you consciously go about the task of learning how to change yourself from the inside? I have 3 reasons for you. First, because you decide to learn new skills or ways of expressing yourself. Second, because you may have any number of beliefs acting as resistance in the acquisition of the new skills you are attempting to learn. The third I will get to in a moment. Right now I want to give you an example to illustrate these first 2 points. A client of mine lost an uncle that he was very close to while he was still a child. His uncle was very much of a father figure to him, where his own father was not. The uncle died of a heart attack at a young age while doing some very strenuous exercise. Because of this experience my client grew up believing he would also die of a heart attack, if he exercised too strenuously. What would have been just normal heart pounding, to anyone else, after working up a sweat, he would perceive as the beginning of a heart attack. He would start to hyperventilate and stop doing whatever he was doing. Obviously, His belief about dying was very limiting. As a result, he never participated in any sports as a child or well into his adult life. Well, by the time he was in his late 30s, he decided that he was not going to die prematurely of a heart attack like his uncle. Actually, he didn't make this decision until after he passed the age in which his uncle had died. His uncle's age at the time of his death was the age at which my client thought that he would also die. When it didn't happen, he gave up the whole notion. Deciding to build up his stamina, he asked me for some tips on how to become a runner, since he knew I had been running for years. In a sense, running was a new skill for him and definitely a new way of expressing himself. So we went running together. Of course, what he found out was that he couldn't run. Not that he couldn't take the steps in the fashion of a runner, it is just that every time his heart rate started to climb, he would stop dead in his tracks, even though his intent was to keep on going. His beliefs about dying from exercise still had a great deal of power in his mental environment. This belief acted as resistance, working against his conscious intent to run. Consciously, he was giving his body instructions to keep on going. His conflicting belief, however, was saying, "No way, pal, you're staying right here until your heart rate goes down." In this situation, it was very easy to determine what component of his mental system had more power over his behavior. The third reason why you would want to learn to change from the inside instead of forcing the environment to conform to your psychological makeup relates strictly to trading. The markets are just too big for one person or even a group of individuals to prevail for long. That is, if you don't have the financial power to move prices in your direction, then you are going to have to learn how to flow with and constantly adapt to the outer conditions. The choice is you can either adapt or continue to experience some very painful lessons. A quick hint, the intensity of your emotional discomfort and pain you experience as a trader is an excellent indication of how much you will have to change to trade without fear and be consistently successful. You might ask, why consider the market from a psychological perspective at all? Doesn't the market behave as it does regardless of what a single individual thinks or feels about it? My answer is this: the market behaves as it does because of the interactions of hundreds of thousands of people. And since all these individuals are members of the human race, regardless of national origin, religious conviction, or what have you, they will all have one thing in common: the psychological structure of the human mind. This psychological structure behaves in certain highly predictable ways whenever it encounters stress or split-second decisions. In the market, the fear of losing one's fortune is every bit as intense as the fear of losing one's life from an attack by a wild animal. However, even though we all participate collectively, the market is not the same for all of us. Every move the market makes has a different meaning and impact on each of us as individuals. And every trader's experience of this movement is the result of his individual mental process of inputting environmental information, perception, and all the unique internal psychological factors that affect his behavior. So, even though two or more traders can agree on what the current price is, they will not be sharing the same experience of how that price is impacting them personally. The meaning you place on any particular price change is the result of your beliefs. As a trader, you constantly have to define what is high and what is low relative to your beliefs about the future. That is the only way you can make money: buy low and sell it back at a higher price, in the future, or sell high and buy it back at a lower price, in the future. As long as prices continue to move, that movement will create opportunities to buy low and sell high, or sell high and buy low, and these opportunities are available for all traders. You create the game in your own mind based on your beliefs, intents, perceptions, and rules. It is your own unique perspective and no one else's, and the secret is, you can and do choose how you perceive events. Even if you are not aware of exactly how to control and change your perception to make other choices available to yourself, you are still choosing, even if it is out of ignorance. Until you learn the appropriate skills, your success as a trader will be determined by a number of psychological factors that often have little or nothing to do with the markets. There are many reasons why traders are not successful. These reasons can be broken down into three broad categories. Lack of skills. The trader is generally not aware that the trading environment is different from all other environments. Trading has the appearance of something that should be easy to do, coupled with the possibility of making vast amounts of money in a relatively short period of time. The trader will thus create some inflated expectations of success. Adherence to these inflated expectations without the appropriate skills equals disappointment, which equals pain, which equals psychological damage, which equals fear. Fear diminishes the trader's ability to be objective, execute his trades, or learn about the fundamental nature of the markets. Of course, it is possible to make money without the appropriate skills. However, without these skills the trader will invariably lose what he made back to the markets plus more. The result is disappointment, pain, psychological damage, and fear. People generally don't know how to repair psychological damage and as a result don't know how to release themselves from their fear. To compensate, we learn some very sophisticated ways of covering our fear up. In society we can get by and even be successful with a facade of confidence because people will generally support each other's illusions about themselves. The market, however, has no vested interest in supporting anyone's illusions about himself. If a trader is feeling fearful, he can try to cover it up all he wants, but his trading results will readily reflect his true feelings. Limiting beliefs. Most people have a whole assortment of beliefs that argue against their success as a trader. Some of these beliefs you may be consciously aware of, most of them you may not be aware of. In any case, you cannot negate their significance and how they will determine and affect your behavior as a trader. Many traders will try to circumvent confronting these limiting beliefs by becoming an expert market analyst. It doesn't matter how good a market analyst you become, if you don't release yourself from the effects of these beliefs, you won't be successful to the extent these limiting beliefs have power in your mental system. There are many market gurus who can predict market moves with uncanny accuracy but can't make money as a trader. Either they don't know the nature of beliefs and how they affect and determine behavior, or they don't want to confront the issues surrounding these beliefs. You have to want to do it or nothing will happen. And if you choose not to, you will be subjecting yourself to the same recurring cycles of negative experiences again and again until you either decide to work through whatever issues are necessary or lose all your money and have to give it up. Lack of self-discipline. If a type of environmental conditions exist that are beyond your skill level to respond to appropriately, without doing harm to yourself, then you will need to institute some rules and limitations to guide your behavior until you learn how to act in your best interests. When you were a child, your parents didn't let you cross the street by yourself because the consequences of your inability to cross safely might have precluded your getting a second chance. When you were able to make the appropriate distinctions about the nature of traffic, your parents trusted you enough to cross the street on your own. Until they trusted you, they always feared the possibility of your getting hit by a car. As a result of their fear, they restricted your freedom of movement, regardless of the opportunities that may have existed for you across the street. Your interaction with the trading environment works the same way. The difference is that no one is stopping you from standing in the middle of the street, metaphorically, to get hit by a truck. You are the only one who can stop yourself. After you have been hit once or twice, it might not be so easy to cross the street, regardless of how good the opportunities look on the other side. What makes it even more difficult, continuing with the traffic metaphor, to step out into the street is when you further realize that the cars and trucks can come at you in a seemingly random fashion. All of a sudden you're lying on the street not even knowing what hit you because you thought you were being careful.